We're going to replace our radiator today. It's going to be located behind our grill underneath the hood. We're going to go ahead and use our 10mm wrench, go ahead and loosen and disconnect our ground on our battery. Spin that off and set that aside. Let's go ahead and locate our radiator cap right here underneath the hood. Let's go ahead and twist this. Open this up. Pop this off and set it aside. Now, with the vehicle raised up off the ground, there's normally a plastic cover right underneath the front of the bumper. You can use a trim tool or a small blade screwdriver to go ahead and pry it up underneath, or it actually pops from the top and it will hang down here. The purpose of this here is you want to go ahead and access the drain coolant plug on the bottom side of your radiator up through here, and coolant is going to come down. So at this point here, go ahead and grab a drain bucket or a catch can to catch that coolant that is going to drain out of the radiator. Now, you're viewing this from the passenger side wheel well area, and here, right here, is our radiator drain plug. And what we're going to do is, normally you can reach up here and grab this and twist it. I'm able to do this here, but if you can't, you can use a pair of pliers to reach up in here. You want to turn this counterclockwise and drain it. Don't forget to have your drain can or catch can underneath. Let's go ahead and open this up. Let's go ahead and install our drain plug here. Now, the reason why we open up the radiator cap was that helps with a rapid drain. There's no vacuum put on the system. So once we open up this cap, you can clearly see that it drained out quickly. And we'll go ahead and make sure that that is snug. And then we're just going to go ahead and wipe things down from all that residual coolant. With our radiator drained and plugged off on the bottom, we can now go ahead and install our radiator cap. When you use our trim tool, and we'll go underneath our hood here, there's going to be a series of plastic push pins on the top of our radiator support. Now, our particular vehicle seems to be missing a whole bunch of these clips, as well as our upper air intake tube right here. Now, what you want to do is go ahead and remove your clips here, remove the air intake tube, and set that aside. Using your trim tool, go ahead and pop up the center of these buttons. Good to remove these clips. Once we get those out, we'll just go ahead and set those aside. Go ahead and lift up and remove this unit. Put that aside. On the top of the grill here, you have two 8mm bolts going into the upper support. Loosen and remove these bolts. I'm going to go ahead and remove two Phillips head screws. There's one vertical here, one going into the front here. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, loosen and remove these screws. We're going to repeat this process for the passenger side. Now, for this here, we did remove our wheels. It just made it that much easier for us. It's not necessary for you to do that, but trust me, it does make it easier to get in to your hardware. Across the lower lip of your front bumper, there's a series of plastic push pins. Just go ahead and use your trim tool. We need to go ahead and remove these. Starting at the edge of your bumper, doesn't matter driver or passenger side, go ahead and grab the lip here, pull outward. What you're doing is disconnecting the bumper from the locking trim inside. Pull out towards you, towards the front. And this will start to disconnect all the way around. It's going to unlock from underneath your headlight assembly. As you pull this out, you're going to look down behind. If your vehicle is equipped with fog lights, you're going to have a connector down there you want to disconnect. Simply reach down, press on the tab, and pull that connector off. As you continue to pull the bumper off or on the front with the grille, you're going to have the passenger side fog light to disconnect as well. Now that we have the fog lights disconnected, you can remove the bumper and the grille in one fell swoop. Underneath the bumper area, go ahead, loosen and remove this 10mm nut. Remove this 10mm bolt. One up above it. Let's continue up top. Remove this bolt right here. At this point here, we can just tilt our bracket backward here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect our line here to our AC condenser. Now, there might be a slight bit of pressure in here. You just want to gently wiggle this unit and separate it from the AC condenser. Just a rubber O-ring holding that unit there. On the side here, we have a 10mm. Once you remove that, this bracket will swing up and off. Repeat for the other side. Underneath our bumper, we do have another bracket right here. Remove this bolt, 10mm. That's going to allow us to flex this down a little bit. And then the lower AC condenser line is right here, 10mm. Pull that bolt, reach in there, pop that out, remove the 10mm bolt holding the radiator bracket, pop off the bracket, and that'll come off with the rubber O-ring on the top. Go ahead and set those aside and repeat for the other side. Inside the engine compartment, you're going to locate your electric fans here. What you want to do is pop these out using your trim tool. It's going to be a series of these holding the electrical harness for the electric fans. Once we get those disconnected, we want to go ahead and disconnect our connectors to our electric fans. I'm just going to press on the back of the tab here. Go ahead and wiggle these connectors out. Now that we have all of our harnesses disconnected here, let's go ahead and remove our hoses. To remove your lower splash shield here, we're going to use our trim tool. We want to pop off our plastic buttons that are locking this in. There's going to be a few of these that run underneath. Once you get your last clip out, you can go ahead and lower this unit down and set it aside. And even though we drained our radiator previously, we're just going to go ahead and crack this open again, just to catch any residual that might be sitting in our radiator. Not much in there, but when we do open up the radiator hoses, we prefer it come out into a catch can instead of all over the ground. So we did have a little bit of coolant left in the radiator. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the drain plug right here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect our automatic transmission fluid lines here. There's one here on the passenger side and one on the driver's side. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze this clamp, open that up, work it back. You want to have a catch can underneath because you will probably get transmission fluid coming out of this here. Grab a pair of pliers here. Just want to go ahead and twist this hose a little bit, break it free, and go ahead and twist that off. Just going to try and wiggle that hose off and work that with your pliers. The driver's side lower corner here, right where we just removed our transmission cool line, there is an electrical connector right here. We're going to go ahead and release that. So we're going to pinch on this little tab. Let's go ahead and wiggle this. And then right up above, there is a little plastic retainer holding this in place. We're simply going to pop this out and separate that from our cooling fan. So at this point here, I want to gently grab our AC condenser, and we're just going to try and pivot this up and out of the way. I'm going to bring our radiator forward, tilt it. We can go ahead and disconnect our hose on the top for our expansion tank. Pop that off like that. When we tilt this forward, we're going to have access to our upper radiator hose. So we're going to pull up on our radiator a little bit, just try and jostle this a little bit free. And bring that forward. And what I want to do is just kind of wedge something in and kind of hold that. I'm going to try our actual hose clamp tool here, see if it works for us. That did expand that. So I'm going to reach around the other side, see if we can twist that hose. I'm just going to use my little pocket screwdriver here and just kind of go in and work my way around the upper radiator hose. Good, pop that off. We can remove that clamp with that tool. Now, after we disconnected the upper radiator hose and all the other miscellaneous components up top, this allows us to go ahead and push up on our radiator and get access to our hose clamp on the bottom. Going to use a pair of pliers. I want to go ahead and open up that lower radiator hose clamp. Slide that back. And once that's back, now we need to work that lower radiator hose off. I'm going to use a pair of pliers here. We're just going to grab that hose and I'm just going to kind of twist it back and forth to break it free. Once that's free, we're going to try and get our hand up in here and try and work this hose off of the radiator. I'm going to use a pry bar, and I'm just going to grab the edge of that hose. I'm going to work that hose and wobble it back and forth. Do what you got to do to get that hose off. Don't forget, have your catch can underneath. There still might be some residual coolant in this hose. Have safety glasses on. And here we go. And I'm going to gently just work this just a little bit, crack it here. And it looks like we are nice and dry. Our hose is separated. The almost dead center of your radiator support from underneath, there's going to be a 10mm bolt holding our transmission cross line here. I'm going to use a pry bar. Going to get underneath the radiator and raise that up so we can actually see that. I'm going to go ahead and get our 10mm socket on there. I'm going to loosen and remove that bolt. Now this is an odd one, tough to find until you start pulling out the radiator from the top and you realize something else is still attached. This can be one of those last hidden secret bolts. Here it is right there. Now accessing from the top, you're going to find your two transmission lines right here. There is a bracket, and this is located on the driver's side lower portion. Right on the bottom, there's another 10mm bolt. Let's see if we can get access to this way here. All right, once we get that loose, let's go ahead and set that aside. Let's go ahead and grab our radiator and fan assembly. Now, as we're working this out, you want to watch your transmission cooler lines. Using our 10mm socket, let's go ahead and loosen and remove the bolts here. Let out. Do the same for the other side. Install this here. When you tighten these down, you just want to snug them down gently. Don't want to make them super, super tight. Once it does bottom out, just a little bit more. Install the pins on the bottom mount area. Lower this into place and get our bolt started. Once we have those started, go ahead and snug those down. Swap over your radiator cap, twisting it counterclockwise, remove it, line it up on the new radiator, press it on, and twist it, lock it into place. On the bottom of our radiator here, you're going to have a rubber grommet here, and one beside it. You're going to twist these off and just swap them over to the other radiator. Want to swap over our sensor right here using a 17mm wrench. Get that, drop that on and loosen that. And spin that out. There is a rubber O-ring on this, so you want to double check that and make sure that that O-ring is in good condition. If everything is in good condition, go ahead and swap it over to your new radiator. Let's take our fan and radiator assembly. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. I'm going to slowly lower this down. As we lower this down, you want to watch the transmission line tubes at the bottom. Move the hoses out of the way. And this is where we want to go ahead and line up the rubber grommets on the bottom of our radiator into the support down below. Going to require shifting around your AC condenser a little bit. Once we have our condenser in place, we can now line up those rubber grommets on the bottom of our radiator into our cross member. Now from underneath the vehicle, we want to go ahead and try and line up our radiator and get our rubber grommets lined up into our cross member here. Now you'll be able to feel the bottom of the radiator and feel the rubber bushing. I'm going to do this on both sides. You can reach up inside on the cross member, feel that rubber bushing resting inside. So we know that our radiator is set in place. We're gonna go ahead and start a preliminary setup of getting our hoses installed. We have our transmission hose here. Push that on, come across. There's a bracket in the middle right here. So we know that is pretty much lined up. We're gonna get our other transmission line hooked up on the driver's side here. Just gonna press that down and on. And then we're gonna come on over here and I want to get that transmission bracket and everything lined up over there and get our lower radiator hose lined up and wiggle that into place. All right, so we have our two transmission lines hooked up, our center bracket lined up, our lower radiator hose lined up and pushed on. Let's go ahead and get our clamps installed next. All right, we're gonna go ahead and tighten up our clamps. Now we decided to get rid of the old clamp style and we put on some hose clamp style here. We just wanted to update it, get something fresh on there. We don't want to take a chance of an old clamp snapping or breaking. We're gonna go ahead and tighten these down. And when we do this for the other cooler line and the lower radiator hose. Once we have all three of these clamps on, we're going to go ahead and install the two 10mm bolts, one for our transmission line bracket on this side here, and then we have the center bracket right here. We're going to get those started and we'll tighten those down. Let's get our bracket installed here and put our bolt in. This is on the driver's side lower corner of the radiator. Now in order to get this lower bolt lined up, I was able to reach up and grab the transmission line here in the middle and just kind of wiggle this up and down. Their bracket lined right up. Get that bolt started a few threads. We're not going to tighten that one there until we get our center one installed. Let's go ahead and install our center bolt here. Get that in, get that started a few threads. Once this is in a few threads, we're going to go ahead and tighten both of them down. Okay, this one's snug. Gonna repeat for the other side. On the passenger side, I'm gonna go ahead and install our line into our hose clamp right here on the lower portion of our radiator. And just press that on and we'll lock that in. And once that's locked in, go ahead and repeat for the one up above it. I'm gonna install our upper radiator hose. Now we did replace our old clamp with a hose clamp now. Let's get and work that hose on. Install the upper radiator support brackets. There'll be one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. Get each of the bolts started, and then we'll tighten them down together. go ahead and install our harness on our fans, pushing our clips in. Connect our fan connectors and press those in. You can hear and feel them lock into place. Continue through the driver's side, pushing in our buttons here. And install our temp sensor harness right here. There's a little tab right here on the radiator fan shroud here. This pushes up and locks in. Then you can continue running down the driver's side here using your little plastic retainer push clips to lock that in place. This side harness here runs down to the temp sensor at the bottom of the radiator. Install your temp sensor harness to the sensor right beyond this little notch here on your radiator. I'm going to line that up. You'll feel it and hear it click into place. Install your little lock tabs or harness connectors into the back side of the radiator shroud. And it'll keep that harness out of harm's way. Once we get that pressed and locked in, we'll go ahead and move back up top. Install our front brace right here. I'm going to have to lift up a little bit on that AC condenser to get this down inside. And then the upper bracket will line up here. Let's go ahead and get our upper bolt installed. With that upper bolt started, let's go ahead and install the lower nut. Let's go ahead and get our bolts started into our bracket here. Get the upper one started. Let's go ahead and get our lower one started here and tighten our bottom nut. Go up to the top, tighten the bracket up here. Once we have that tight, tighten these up. Install the upper AC condenser brackets. Slide the rubber bushing down on top of the AC condenser. Put our bracket in. Just going to get that bolt started a little bit by hand. Repeat for the driver's side. Go ahead and tighten down these bolts. Repeat for the other side. I'm going to reach behind here, line up your fog light connectors. Go ahead and press those and clip it on. Go ahead and repeat for the other side. Now what I want to do is go ahead and bring up our bumper assembly. I'm going to line up our bumper here on the side. Get the bumper inserted in underneath our headlight assembly. As we're doing that on the driver's side, I want to do the same on the passenger side. And get our bumper lined up over here. Let's go ahead and repeat this process for the passenger side. You can install your bolts on the top here. They're 10mm bolts. We just happen to source a couple new ones. Not going to tighten them down. We just want to get these lined up. and get those threaded down. Just going to install our screw up here. And snug that in. I'm going to install our lower screw right here. Once we have that snug, let's go ahead and repeat for the other side. Let's go ahead and install the upper radiator cover here. Let's go ahead and get our buttons put in. Let's go ahead and install our buttons and just continue this process all the way across the top. We're able to source our air intake tube here. Get that pressed into place. Let's go ahead and install these two buttons. Go ahead and fill your radiator. Twist the radiator cap counterclockwise. Go ahead and pop this off. At this point here, you want to go ahead and grab a funnel that's going to work for your application. You want to go ahead and get the appropriate coolant recommended for your vehicle. We're going to start filling the radiator. Now once your radiator is filled up to the top, go ahead and remove your funnel. And install your cap. At this point here, you want to go ahead and top off your expansion tank over here. We're going to go ahead and fill it up to our max line here. At that point there, you want to go ahead and start up the vehicle. You want to let it run for about 20 minutes to a half hour, let the thermostat open up, the engine heat up, and you're going to add coolant as necessary through the expansion tank. You do not want to open up the radiator cap after the engine has been operating and hot. So you want to open this up, add coolant as necessary through here. Go ahead and grab your ground terminal. Go ahead and connect that. I'm going to go ahead and tighten down our nut here. Once that's snug, you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.